Welcome to today's Explainer. I spend way too much time thinking about how complex financial systems quietly extract money from everyday people. And the craziest part, these people actually believe they're making smart, highly informed decisions. So, today we are going to completely deconstruct an industry that is just notoriously opaque. We're talking about the mortgage industry. We are going to look under the hood at the hidden profit layers inside literally every single home loan. If you're planning to buy a home, maybe you're looking to refinance, or honestly, if you just want to stop overpaying without even realizing it, you are exactly in the right place. Because as you're going to see, the absolute biggest cost in a mortgage isn't always the one they show you up front. In fact, it almost always happens entirely behind the scenes.
To really understand how this machine works, let me introduce you to a guy named Alex. Now, Alex did everything right. He didn't rush in. He definitely didn't trust his lender blindly. For 2 whole years, he prepared for this exact moment. He tracked interest rates like he was a Wall Street trader. He compared multiple lenders, and he studied the entire loan process top to bottom. So, when his lender initially offered him a 6.75% interest rate, Alex immediately pushed back. It took 2 phone calls, a really firm follow-up email, and, a little bit of applied pressure. But just like that, the lender dropped the rate to 6.25%. The loan officer even told him, "Man, we're barely making anything on this deal." And in that quiet, internal moment, Alex felt this incredible illusion of victory. He thought to himself, "I beat the system."
But we really have to stop and ask the crucial question here. Did he actually beat the system? I want you to think about that for a second. Alex is not careless, he's not uninformed. Actually, scratch that, he is way above average when it comes to financial literacy. He has great credit, a really solid income, and he negotiated aggressively. And yet, he still lost thousands of dollars in this transaction. Why? Well, because the modern mortgage system isn't just designed to take advantage of careless people, it's actively designed to outstructure informed people. That is a massive distinction. And that exact feeling of victory that Alex felt, that's actually just part of the system working perfectly.
Okay, let's dive into this first hidden layer. The interest rate is obviously the most visible part of your mortgage, but it's also by far the most misleading. Why is that? Because it's literally the only layer you are encouraged to focus on. Alex's negotiated rate of 6.25%, which is a 0.5% drop from his original offer, looks like an absolute home run on paper. But underneath that number is a hidden baseline, and it's called the par rate. The par rate is the true bedrock baseline rate where the lender makes their money without adding any extra hidden margin or markup to your specific interest rate. Alex never asked for the par rate. He just negotiated down from this totally arbitrary ceiling that the lender set for him. So even at 6.25%, the lender still baked in a hidden markup. It's wild. But you can aggressively negotiate your rate, feel like a total winner, and still be overpaying every single month for the next 30 years.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because now we enter the second layer, the fee stack. You've got origination fees, processing fees, underwriting fees, document preparation. Honestly, you're practically charged an admin fee just for breathing the air in the lender's lobby. Once the massive numbers, like the house price and the interest rate, are somewhat settled, the entire psychology of the transaction shifts. Now the lender starts introducing these smaller numbers. And human psychology dictates that smaller numbers feel significantly less important. Each one of these fees has a very official-sounding justification. Each one sounds like a totally reasonable fixed cost of doing business. But here is the secret. Most of these are entirely flexible. They are only fixed because you didn't think to ask if they were adjustable. This is exactly how a lender quietly stacks thousands of dollars onto your closing costs, cleverly masked as administrative necessities.
And lenders know exactly when to introduce this fee stack. By the time these itemized fees finally appear on your loan estimate, you are already so deep into the process. You spent weeks gathering documents, you've submitted endless bank statements, you've had your credit pulled, and most importantly, you are emotionally attached to the home you're trying to buy. You are just exhausted. You just want the keys. You don't want any more friction. And lenders absolutely bank on this exact emotional fatigue. They know that by this stage, the average buyer is going to stop questioning a $400 processing fee or a $600 admin charge simply because they just want to keep the deal moving forward. So the absolutely crucial point here is that this emotional fatigue makes you vulnerable to the next layer, which is the timeline trap. When you lock in your supposedly great interest rate, you're given a window, usually 30 to 60 days to close the loan. If you miss that window, you are hit with a rate lock extension fee. This is typically a penalty of about 0.125% to 0.25% of your total loan amount. Now, on a standard $300,000 loan, that is hundreds of dollars just vanishing into thin air. But here is the really uncomfortable truth. You, the buyer, almost never control the timeline. Underwriting delays, last-minute document requests, scheduling issues, these are almost always caused by the lender. Yet when their delays push you past your 30-day window, you are the one forced to pay the penalty to keep your rate. It is an absolutely brilliant, completely risk-free profit mechanism for the lender.
And then finally, you make it to the finish line. Or, well, so you think. This brings us to what I call the closing table illusion. Closing feels like the end of the journey, right? In reality, it's just where everything becomes official and surprisingly expensive. Right as you are sitting there signing a stack of papers an inch thick, another layer of costs quietly stacks up. You're hit with title insurance, which is very often from the lender's preferred marked-up vendor. You see escrow setup fees, wire transfer fees, notary charges, recording markups. Individually, they seem incredibly small, $50 here, $100 there, but combined, they easily extract another $1,000 or more. Because at the closing table, your mindset has fully shifted from negotiator to finalizer. You've stopped fighting. And that exact psychological shift is where the profit margins expand one last time before they hand over the keys.
Now imagine you've survived all of that. You're in your new home, you've painted the walls, you think this whole transaction is completely in the rearview mirror. But then, 2 weeks later, a routine letter arrives in the mail. It looks incredibly boring, just standard, run-of-the-mill corporate mail. It politely informs you that your loan has been transferred to a new servicer and you have a new address to send your monthly payments to. Everything seems perfectly normal, it's just administrative housekeeping, right? End of story. But in reality, this seemingly innocent letter is the trigger for the single most profitable extraction in the entire mortgage lifecycle. And the wildest part of the whole shebang, you aren't even a participant in it.
This brings us to the true climax of the system. Your friendly local lender, the one who smiled and shook your hand at closing, almost never keeps your loan. They turn right around and sell it. Your carefully negotiated mortgage is bundled together with thousands of others and sold to massive institutional buyers like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, or packaged into mortgage-backed securities for Wall Street investors. The lender you dealt with was essentially just a middleman, an originator whose primary goal was just to create the financial product, which is your debt, so they could immediately flip it and sell it on the secondary market.
Now, to put this into perspective, what's truly staggering is the sheer scale of the profit involved in that back-end sale. Look at these numbers. When your lender sells your loan to these massive institutions, they don't sell it for exactly what they lent you. They sell it for a premium. They typically make an additional 2.5% to 3.5% on the back end. So let's just do the math on a standard middle-of-the-road $300,000 loan. A 3.5% premium means the lender makes up the $10,500 the very moment they sell your debt. That is pure profit generated instantly, weeks after you thought the deal was closed. This is exactly why they were so willing to drop your interest rate by 0.5% up front. They knew the real payday was waiting for them in the secondary market.
Let's look at how these profit layers stack up on a single transaction, because it's pretty eye-opening. First, the fee stack quietly pulls in thousands up front. Then, the hidden interest adds a nice little margin you'll be paying every month for decades. And finally, the back-end sale generates a massive $10,000 instantly. Now, I want you to zoom out for a second. This isn't just one clever loan officer tricking Alex. This is the fundamental business model of the entire industry. Massive companies execute these exact stacked profit layers on hundreds of thousands of loans every single year. It is a finely tuned machine operating at a completely unbelievable scale.
But hey, here is the good news. Once you can see the machine, you can dismantle it. Let me introduce you to Elena, our informed counterpart. She walked into the exact same lender with the exact same loan size in the exact same week as Alex. But Elena didn't just negotiate. She applied a very specific 4-step strategy to completely neutralize those hidden layers. Step 1, she explicitly asked for the par rate, which completely removed the hidden interest markup from the conversation right out of the gate. Step 2, she negotiated every single fee in the stack, forcing them to drop the flexible admin charges. Step 3, she shopped for and chose her own title company, totally bypassing the lender's marked-up preferred vendor. And Step 4, she stayed ruthlessly ahead of the underwriting timelines, ensuring she never risked a single lock extension fee.
By applying these 4 steps, the entire dynamic of the transaction flips. Notice that Elena didn't use aggressive pressure tactics. She didn't yell or get angry. She just used awareness. By knowing exactly where the lender's profit centers were hidden, she navigated right around the systemic traps. She didn't let smaller numbers lull her into compliance, and she didn't let timeline pressure force her into paying arbitrary penalties. She walked away with a fundamentally cheaper mortgage, keeping thousands of her own dollars exactly where they belong, in her own bank account, rather than feeding the massive back-end machinery of the mortgage industry.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. The real game happens in the invisible layers. Alex didn't fail because he wasn't smart. He failed because he was only playing the game the lender allowed him to see. He followed the visible rules perfectly, but true financial leverage, whether you are buying a house, investing, or navigating honestly any complex system, comes from seeing the unseen. Once you understand the hidden structures, the fee stacks, the back-end sales, I promise you, you will never look at a financial transaction the exact same way again. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I highly, highly encourage you to take this knowledge and use it to your absolute advantage.